Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Lead Score Monday for the last time in 2025. I'm Casey Hawkins here with Chris Carolan and Rylee Powell. This is the 2025 finale, and this is the How episode. So for the past 6 weeks, we've been deconstructing traditional lead scoring and rebuilding it. Who are we scoring? Everyone, not just leads. Why are we scoring? Resource allocation, not arbitrary MQL quotas. What are we scoring? Fit signals, engagement signals, progression signals. Where do scores become useful? This was the translation layer, labels, views, cards that make sense to the humans who are reading them. And then when do scores matter? Time is the missing dimension. We looked at recency, frequency, and consistency. And now today, how do we actually build this in HubSpot? Now, I need to set some expectations up front. We have 1 hour. I can't build everything from scratch in 1 hour. That would be impossible. And honestly, probably pretty boring to watch because it would be a lot of me just clicking buttons and making noises to fill the space. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through some of the decisions that you need to make before you touch HubSpot, because if you start building without these decisions, you'll just recreate the same broken logic we've been complaining about for 6 weeks. Second, we're going to build a couple pieces together. We'll look at the engagement scoring with proper time awareness. I'll show you how some of the time frame stacking patterns that we discussed and how you can create some of those natural decays. And these are the pieces that you can replicate when you get to your desk. And then I'll give you a tour of some of the systems, some of the fit scores, progression recognition, and some of the ways I translate this for actual teams inside HubSpot. I started Lead Scoring Monday earlier this year when HubSpot announced they were sunsetting the legacy scoring properties. My first thought was, great, now I have to rebuild all these scores. My second thought was, wait, why would I rebuild the same broken logic I've been hearing complaints about for years? HubSpot gave us these new tools, better components, more flexibility, actual time awareness. So this hasn't been a migration project. It was an opportunity to rebuild what's been broken. So let's do it. Let's build scoring that finally works the way it should. Chris, Rylee, are you ready to get into it?
Let's do it.
Already.
Clicks on page.
Clicks on page. All right. Let's start with some of the decisions you need to make before you build anything. So when we say that, most often the first thing I ask someone is, why are they asking you to build a score? And what that tends to be is it tends to fall into either one of two categories. The world we all want to be in, which is we have so many leads that we don't know who to prioritize. To be honest, that's very seldom the answer I get. More commonly, what I hear when people say, hello, Casey, I would like you to build some scores for me, is that their team does not have so many hand raisers. So they're trying to figure out what to do with everyone else in their system. Chris, what would you like people to be looking at when they ask us to build their scores? Because my guess is it's neither of those.
I think the second thing gets to the matter at hand, is that we don't understand everybody or everything that's happening. We're spending money, time, energy on trying to make things happen before before deals happen, before deals open up. And outside of very clear prospecting schedule against ICP, developed lists, and outside of people actually filling out direct demo forms or really any kind of forms, we're guessing. We don't really know what to understand, what to look at. This is where I think starting with the container of where this is going to be, and that it's included in a unified customer view, tends to frame the conversation in a way that you can actually make constructive progress towards a thing. Like, we know there's this big nebulous stuff happening. We know there's buyer intent signals, there's stuff happening on social, we're paying for HubSpot, we should be able to collect all this stuff, as opposed to going right to like a score build. If we don't understand what we have access to and what is actually happening, then how can we possibly, build an effective score?
Yeah. Rylee, where do you like to start?
I kind of go when it gets to like actual building, pretty granular, believe it or not. And, the first thing I'm trying to figure out is, all right, what are the fit scores? Because to me, engagement scores, fine and dandy, but especially now with things crawling your website and like all engagement activity is not usually, I like to look at fit first. So I typically will start putting together some fit criteria based off of who we're trying to, mostly at the company level. I'm assuming for the most part, we're like a B2B organization here, and figure out, okay, what companies are in our database and how well do they fit kind of our ICPs or, SAM or SOM kind of criteria.
Yeah, and to dig into that a little bit, I know, Rylee, you got me started using Breeze Assistant to help with that fit. So what I have done in the most recent lead scores that I've built is even before, this is going to cause Chris to pass out, but even before I talk to the humans, a lot of times I'll start here because a lot of times the humans have an idea of who they think their customer is. So I like to start with Breeze to tell me what does the data say the customer is.
Yeah, I think coming into those conversations with a loose framework that's like, hey, here's, according to your data, assuming this isn't just a totally new HubSpot portal with no data in it at all, like here's who HubSpot would identify loosely as like people that should be on the higher end of higher scoring kind of works out just based off companies that are configured as customer. Now, again, a lot of the data hygiene matters a lot when you start doing this, because you have to tell Breeze like, okay, we've identified our customers as lifecycle stage customer. Or if you have some other unique property that you have that's identifying your customers, then you have to make sure it knows these are our customers. Do an analysis of all these, try and figure out like, hey, what do they have in common? What do they have separate between them? And what do they have separate from them and everybody else?
Yeah. Before I correct the record on my stance on what you just said, that specific query might not be great to do in this portal. But yeah, I agree with Rylee I agree with both of you in terms of like, I don't trust any humans to actually understand what the data is telling them or what the data could be telling them. What data, they don't even know what data is available, often, and they haven't built the unified customer view, so they probably haven't understood the context of it all. Where, sometimes it's as simple as like looking at 10 or 20 email opens in a row and seeing very clearly a pattern that the humans aren't paying attention to because they got a couple deals from one of them, and that obviously was the best performing one. I talk to the humans when it comes to like, how do you use the system? I think that's the important distinction. But when we're querying data, like I do think it's a good place to start of just understanding what do we have, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's a different type of audit now, since you can get AI to help with that, as opposed to just always going to, what properties are used where and how much are they filled in, and then we go to form fills and like all these rote like audits that have been done because we needed some kind of structure to them. Now it's much quicker to get to the insights and probably can include insights that you might not otherwise include if you're involving AI in helping with this.
Yeah, and I typically use the human conversation to either help understand, like, for the most part, like if you're doing this for your organization and you know all the ins and outs of it, then I think you can kind of go a little bit further than some. But like if you're coming in from like a consultative approach and you don't exactly know, like this is a kind of a new portal, this might be a new industry or new business, like get this data and then talk to the humans a ton to figure out where are the like ones everyone agrees with versus, because it's going to generate a bunch of different things of, okay, well, industry equals one of these 20 values is a good sign, or revenue being within this band is a good sign, or employee headcount or whatever. And then you get them to look through it and be like, yeah, actually this is true. Or, well, there's cases where this isn't true. Like you kind of use them to reinforce the gospel and then to like point out where there's nuance and exception. And then that is how you really start getting impact in your lead scoring, is having their like high fidelity kind of nuance in there.
Yeah. And one thing I like about kind of starting here too is I used to build scores and people would say things to me like they would be like, well, we care if the office building is 2 floors with a balcony. And then I'd be like, all right. And then I'd go into HubSpot and I'm like, so that is weird because that doesn't exist at all. But it just like delayed everything because they'd tell me this criteria and they'd say it in a way that like made it feel like it was like the most important thing. And so I'd go into HubSpot and then I'd just be like, certainly it's in here. That would be wild.
Yeah. No, I've been working on this.
No, we asked that as the first question and that's how we figured out.
Yeah. So a lot of this, I've been like trying to build a framework for that exact problem. And it's, you know, this very interesting thing where like the data that you like, you kind of have your 3 buckets of data where you have like your findable stuff, your enrichable stuff, and then your like human verified stuff. And it's like a U-shaped curve of like reliability as you move through it, where like your findable stuff from like the highest level, like industry value, you can pretty much trust that. Company name, city, state, country, like every Zoom info is going to have that, the same value that, you know, these other, you know, HubSpot will have for it, that Clay will have for it. And then as you get into a little bit more nuance of information, that the accuracy and reliability of it kind of goes down a little bit. And then once you get into human conversations, the accuracy and reliability kind of jumps straight back up. But you don't get that information until a human has a conversation. So like I like to build lead scoring with like the findable stuff as the main thing. And then you can use some of that additional stuff downstream to like really add more points or to elevate or like distinct these other companies once that information becomes known. But you want to kind of work with what can I reliably and reasonably get for every company. That way I can like segment my database pretty clearly from that level.
And are you looking at that, Rylee, through Breeze, or are you going into the properties?
What do you mean?
Like, are you asking Breeze how many of these are filled out reliably, or are you going into like,
Breeze has
job title?
Coined a phrase with me that I really like, that it's the knownness. What's a property's knownness? And then how reliable is the knownness? Like it's similar to fill rate, but like it's like a lot of things will be filled with things like no value or NA or something like that. Like that doesn't really point you to anything. So I am doing most of this through Breeze. I'm also learning how important it is to have your property descriptions extremely useful for Breeze, where you're able to edit them.
I like that too. I just built a score for a client, and we've all been in portals that have 5 different job title fields. And one thing that like came up immediately that would have been really hard for me to find without Breeze is like which of the job title fields I should have actually been using. And I actually didn't even realize it until I went to build the score. Like, they gave me this framework, and then I went to build it, and I typed in, let's just say its job title. I don't remember what it was. But I typed in job title to build my score based off of, and like 5 different job title fields. And then I immediately was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Which is the one? And then I just went over to Breeze and I was like, which one should I use? And it like confidently was like, this one. And I was like, are you sure? And it was like, yeah, absolutely, you idiot. I looked at all of them.
Yeah. I like to get like 60 or 70% of scores applied through values that have like over 95% fill rates and knownness, because that really is giving you the best information. So like there's an element of, let's say we're focusing on the company level. Like I just need country, state, revenue, employee size, some things like that I try and get most of the points from. That's just separating people out based on that. Because once you start getting into some of these other properties where the fill rate starts to get lower than 90%, you start putting people into score buckets and thresholds based off of the lack of data rather than known undesirable data. And I care more about known undesirable data than like just missing data.
Yeah. So another thing I feel like comes up really often in these first early stages, like before we get into the tool, is and I'm kind of started to mention this. A lot of times there will be data that comes up that is really important to the score, but we don't have, or this is the stage where we start figuring out that scores or properties aren't as reliable as we thought they were. And I think there's a balance here on like making progress versus just like waiting forever to have the data perfect. What what is your tolerance for kind of speed to an MVP versus getting it right? Is there?
Yeah, for me, Chris, I know if you have different thoughts here, but like this is the ultimate like iterative thing. Like we need to turn something on and get values from it just as quickly as possible, and then you iterate on and kind of improve on, and both within the scores that you built. But then to me, so there's company fit score that I think you just build it globally. That's kind of like, all right, location, revenue, employee size, all this. And then you are trying to then decide, once you start getting the outputs of that and seeing how that distribution flows, like, okay, do we like really finesse this and make it so sophisticated within that score? Or do we kind of build an additional score that is like ICP fit score that has different scoring mechanisms that like, once someone is above a 60 or whatever in the baseline company fit score, then you start like trying to align them based off of some of this more intricate information. Like, so for me, if we're getting started, I want to have kind of the baseline 3 scores: company fit, contact engagement, on and established as quickly as possible, so that I can start looking at how the data is coming out and the distribution is, finding the exceptions, like finding the customer accounts that are low scores and being like, oh, okay, well, what happened there? And then building it in or designing additional scores later. But, and that's coming from someone where I'm self-admittedly like perfection is the enemy of progress kind of guy. Like I will try and build the perfect thing the first time, but with lead scoring, like you just have to start getting some answers quickly in order to ever get to perfection.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm gonna actually spend my afternoon wrapping up a lead score, and we didn't change any of our integrations prior to like where I'm going to get it this afternoon. I'm just getting it to a place where then I can start handing high scores and low scores over to the BDR team, and they can say, yes, no, and start giving me some temperature checks.
Yeah.
Because of that reason. I mean, I could spend months cleaning the data, but that's months before their team's using even the data that we have currently. Chris, do you have an opposing opinion, or are you? Do you want a little more balance than Rylee and
is a good? Yeah, I think the example on screen is a good example of how silos can break this process in half, or not understanding the data structure of the portal can be harmful here, where Breeze and AI might not be able to tell you the shortcomings of this data, because that query, and there's either I'm doing something right or wrong in terms of contacts that are associated to the deal, right? Since I'm worried about a lot of post-sales stuff, and I'm activating projects and services, I'm making sure I have visibility for all the humans involved in all of this. And a lot of times, I very rarely have a one-to-one deal to contact like ratio, but most of the people associated to the deal are not gonna would not be traditionally the people that we want to score from a lead scoring perspective, right? So that's why you see a laundry list of job titles at every level.
Yeah. And one thing I've seen when I've run this, both for like examples, but also with clients, I'll use a score, I'll use a query like this because I want to see which are the contacts associated with the deals. But I'll often see this. You should score people whose life cycle stage is customer, which like from the data's perspective, like I get,
yeah,
it's crazy. It's crazy.
You have to point it to like, I think eventually, like as I continue doing this prompt, I'm establishing like a template that I think is helpful. But then even different portals will break the template in different ways, so it's not even really like you can ever get to this copy and pastable. Like, all right, boom, put it in here and it sends and it's all good, because stuff like this is going to continuously appear. And in particular,
and this is
go ahead.
Highlighting something that I've started to learn as I'm trying to figure out the best way to create value path stages and not have them be so disruptive, trying to leverage HubSpot's reporting tool set. So in this case, I've changed the name of customer to value creator, but the internal name of everything is still customer. And so that's why I'm seeing it in places I wouldn't have expected to see it, but now like I understand why. So that's where the more configurable and customizable that HubSpot has become, and the more that people take advantage of that, there's just lots of places to have gotchas. So as long as you understand that going in, and you can create, even on this screen, if then you take this, as Rylee was mentioning, to the human, be like, this is what we're seeing, like some kind of review process that is a little bit structured, and is not maybe doesn't get down on the process, whatever it is, right? Trying to do that in an objective way, so that they don't like feel bad at the end of the meeting, right? Is important.
Yeah. And as it goes down here, I just wanted to call this out. Like, it does say how I translate this into lead scoring rules. So it has like pluses and minuses. In the most recent example I did, I played with, or I chatted with Breeze a little bit back and forth. I was like, hey, you mentioned customers, like, no shit. that's not actually helpful. And it was like, oh yeah, obviously, like that makes sense, blah, blah, blah. So I was able to like kind of go back and forth. And I knew that this client, so I like even, was like, what about this? What about that? And I got to a place I was happy with it. And then what I actually did was I copied and pasted what Breeze came back with. And I have a project in Claude that I do all my lead scoring work. But like, hello, you watcher of this, you could in theory upload content that I've made to help you with this. Chris, make that an action item for us to make that more accessible. But like in theory, it was easier for me because I made all the content. It already lives in the Claude project. But then I was able to paste what Breeze said and said, okay, I have this from Breeze. Make this a value first score along the principles that we've been talking about for 6 weeks.
I've got that framework that I've put a lot of my GPTs like ChatGPT or Claude have it, but like I've turned it into this knowledge vault article that you can upload into a portal. That like for me specifically, it's kind of like the framework of the score, agnostic of properties, because the values that it puts out is like, it doesn't know what you're trying to achieve with the score. So for me, I always lay out, okay, I want a company fit score that's 100 total points. Like, and I want the maximum achievable points in that score to be 115. Like if someone hits the perfect values for everything, they would in theory get 115 points, but the top score is 100. But like that, you're kind of getting that 85, 90% range of like this, if you get a 9, if you get an A on the test, then you get 100. Because what you want is for people to you want more points available than your 100, because you want to make sure that certain things can still get points. Like your perfect score shouldn't just be 100. So I put all of that into like this AI doc that I just reference. And I make sure it references when it's kind of building the score. And you can do that in any portal. Because you can just go into your Breeze settings and create like a knowledge vault and just paste in plain text into it. Like it doesn't even have to link to a specific article.
Yeah. I do want to kind of poke over into what the scores actually look like.
Yeah.
And if this is your first time building a lead score, welcome. It's under the marketing menu and under lead scoring. Chris, one day this will say value scoring or something like that, and
scoring is fine. Just scoring without the lead.
Scoring.
Yeah,
make it work.
It's fine. And then I create my lead. I create my scores here. Create score. You can choose here to score either contacts, companies, or deals. Stick with contacts just for the moment. And then if you've been following along for the past year, you already know my preference is to break this up into 3 scores. I have a company score. This one has a bunch. A company score, a contact score, and then an engagement score. And the reason I do that is that allows me to be able to see all 3 pieces individually. So I can see a little bit more on like why someone is reaching their score. And then this is just a calculated field that I'm using at this point to add these scores up.
Yeah, I like their combined score, but I think I like to do my own version of it that gives me a lot more buckets, because the buckets you get with it are like these 9, A1, A2, A3, B2, B2, B1, B2, B3. And I like to have more than that. Like I like to have a 9, like a 18 grid thing. So, but I'm the same. I do contact fit, company fit, and then contact engagement. There's an argument for company engagement if you're doing like extremely complex, massive deal cycles into like enterprise level organizations where you need kind of an aggregate of contact engagement at the company level of company engagement to look through. But if you're starting out, I recommend just doing those 3. If you fall down the rabbit holes of the other ones, you can get lost quickly, just in concept. So like Draw your lines, do your contact fit, company fit, contact engagement. Start there. And if you rework it for a combined score or something like that, then more power to you. But I just think that'll help you like get something built and on quicker.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I mean, when I first started doing scoring, I had these broken out like way more. These three have been kind of a sweet spot I've found where like it's easy to see why someone's scoring, but it's not so overwhelming that you kind of get lost in the forest.
And it gives you the raw ingredients to figure out what you actually want to do with everything. Like you can kind of see how some of this spits out and comes out and then figure out, okay, yeah, a combined score would be good here or not. Like it's not something that's applicable in all instances.
Yeah, I do really like the combined score. But yes, just echoing what you said, Rylee, the reason I don't use combined score is just I like a little bit more. If you do a combined score, you can see fit and you can see engagement. But I personally, and most of my work is B2B, personally, I find it important to be able to see the contact fit separately from the company fit. And there's not really a great way to do that inside the combined score. However, depending on the complexity of your business, you can always start there. You could start with a combined score just even to see what's going on. I'm going to build a fit score right now. No, I'm going to build an engagement score because I think it's important to look at the timeliness of things. I changed my mind.
Yeah, and I think this is the more complex one that really you benefit from seeing the things that can be scored. Like in your mind, when you think contact fit and company fit, it's pretty self-explanatory. Like it's the properties. For the most part, it's property values equaling certain values. It's properties equaling certain values. But when you get into this, the array of things, like the buffet for you to choose from of engagement types and like all this it helps to see and walk through. Adds a lot more color than if you're just building a fit score.
I agree. And at the legacy scoring properties basically were fit scores. So if you were scoring in the old properties, the fit is going to come naturally.
Yeah.
And also, if you're watching this, I have videos on like all of this stuff individually. I'm just trying to do as much as I can in an hour. Just try my best here.
So let's really quick set a fictional framework. To me, building a fit score here for a company that is trying to identify, they have a BDR team and they're trying to kind of identify contacts for the BDR team to be working. They have a finite, number of BDR people so that they can't just send them everyone who's clicking on their website. They have to actually qualify them a bit more. So the objective of this is, let's find contacts that are doing sufficient things to warrant, if no one was working them before, they're being elevated to a BDR team. Like you kind of want your primary lens of like, all right, if someone reaches our score here, what are we doing with them?
And I still break these out into 3 categories: low intent, medium intent, high intent, also sometimes referred to as audience researcher or hand raiser. If you've been following this series, it kind of evolved into something more like that. But they follow the same.
Yep, I do the same, and I typically have historically used terms from like the marketing funnel, which is like awareness, interest, consideration, but same exact concept.
Yeah. As we've evolved into this more value first scoring, I'll just call this audience to close the loop here, at least. And my audience is going to be the people who are kind of doing the least. They're just doing the least on the website.
I mean, think about the term audience. To me, I love it because it's like, well, they bought a ticket and they showed up. They're there. We don't know really what they're doing, but they're there. Like they could have not been there, and they're there.
Yes. Yeah. And they could have not been there, but they are there.
They could have been anywhere else, and they chose to be there.
And it counts for something. Yeah. And this is going to be important also when it comes when we add those layers of fit on top of this. So when we're looking at like BDR teams and who should they be interacting with, if their best audience, and their best audience could very well be CEOs, but if the CEO is just visiting the website, is in the audience, but they're the perfect fit, like there's layers here that kind of play together. And to be clear, that's why I like to break them up, because I like to see, like, is this a perfect contact fit and they're showing low engagement? Okay, then you know what? Maybe the BDR should be adding them on LinkedIn or doing something.
Yeah.
But if it's an intern who's requesting pricing, the intern might not be our perfect contact fit, but they are requesting pricing. So like it all adds to the context.
It's contextually dependent. Yeah. To me, this property right here is the most contextually dependent, where it's like, depending on their contact fit and company fit, you set your send to BDR threshold. You know, if it's a perfect company fit and perfect contact fit, 10 points, send them to the BDR team. Like it should be an extremely low threshold. But if it's like a horrible fit for both of those other company and contact fits, then require them to go up to 100. Like you can let people in based on this other information a lot in a sophisticated way.
So in your audience, you might do things like social interactions. You might do things like just pages visited. There is this high impact pages. This is a demo portal, so there's not actually anything here. I realized that's a bad example. But it will show you using AI what pages are high impact, what pages people are visiting that become based on life cycle stages. So you can filter this based on like what are the pages MQLs are visiting most like often and things like that. But these are the types of things you might kind of add in your low intent. I'll also add things in here often like form submissions. So if our form submission name at time of submission contains resource, newsletter, things like that, these might be pages, these might be forms that I'm giving like low intent points to. And then my pages visited, I might say URL path contains blog. And you'll see here, I made this group limit 10. I don't care if someone visits our blog 100 times. I don't want them to have a score of 100 in engagement. The max I want to give them is 10. And then I'm going to add a time frame here. Honestly, the last 7 days, you can convince me the last 30 days, but it's hard to convince me, especially when we're looking at this audience stage, to go up any more than 30. Kathy, I see you're here today. Hello. Thanks for joining us. I chatted lead scoring with Kathy just last week. Was it 2 weeks ago? Time's weird. But she has a really long sales cycle. And she was saying, you know, she looks at really long time frames. But Rylee, you and I just talked last week about this. And we were like, even if your sales cycle is really long, we want to identify people who are popping up in activity recently.
Yeah. I'll have one caveat here that I usually do that so we've got your 3 groups, you know, audience, researcher, hand raiser. I will typically do like 60 days in audience and then reduce that to 30 days in researcher and then reduce it to 7 in hand raiser. And then you make up your point percentage so that audience can give you like 20% of the total points available. And then researcher can give you like 30%. And then hand raiser gives you like 50%. And that way you can kind of, as you see the scores, as long as you know those rules, you can kind of overlay that on the scores and be like, okay, if you see some people in 20s, then that most likely means that they've done stuff between 30 and 60 days ago. So like they're kind of some level of active, but not doing stuff recently. So I usually kind of switch my time frames based on these intensity buckets just for the usefulness of it. But yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone should ever be near the higher end of the spectrum without doing something within the last 7 days.
And one thing you showed me was it last week? I'm having a hard time processing time. But you showed me this that I think is really interesting that you do too, which is layering something like this. So if someone did a social interaction in the last week, they'll actually get 3 points for that action. But if it was more than a week ago, but less than 30 days ago, they'll still get 1 point, which kind of like
it lets you get some more control over how you do decay, which is why I don't ever like to use their standard decay, because you can only pick like a singular time frame and an arbitrary percentage of decay. Where this, a one that I frequently do is like form submission, and then I'll usually add in time frame and then frequency down beneath it. Like if they submitted 1 in the last 30 days, then give 1 point. If they submitted at least 2, then give 5 points. That way you can kind of create your waterfall effect.
All right. So we have the basis of an audience. Anything else?
I don't typically either take away points usually. So I know this is like a philosophical thing, but for me, like, especially with engagement, I don't necessarily subtract points. Subtracting points then kind of crosses the threshold of like, well, who are we scoring? Like if you want to not score people that visit your careers page or whatever, then you can just not score a segment of those entire people.
Yes. But be careful with the careers page. That is like one of the most common negative scores, I feel like, but I don't feel like that's always true.
No. And I look at careers pages for stuff that like doesn't mean that I'm not like a prospect for them too. So
I just like to know.
Yeah. I don't think that. I think what you're looking for when you're building your score is like adding in scores for desirable actions. I think you can remove scores in fit scoring. That can kind of make sense. But removing them in engagement score to me is not something you should kind of do initially.
I agree. I will do some negatives in fit, not a lot. But mostly I'm just excluding people from scores.
Yeah.
And if I'm excluding them, I'm excluding like our internal employees, competitors, things like that, partners, a little more broadly. So there's a lot of things in engagement scores, and it continues to get added to all the time. One thing that is currently like missing in the scoring tool, and this is December 15th, 2025. This may change by the time you're watching this. But and criteria is really difficult. So it's very difficult for me to say they visited a blog page and they filled out our newsletter form or something like that. The workaround for
your entire groupings around that notion. So you would have to kind of get rid of the groupings that we went with and do your groupings. And you just do a bunch of different groupings like that.
You can also use a workflow. So you could enroll someone in a workflow that did both of those things and then score them based on their workflow. Where do you think intent signals should live, Rylee? We've talked a lot about intent signals. If you're unfamiliar with intent signals in HubSpot, these are buyer intent signals. HubSpot purchased, Clearbit. I think this is from Clearbit, right? but they'll give you signals of companies researching things, research topics. In this case, we have this set up to look at HubSpot agencies, and this is going to show me which companies have been researching that over the past 30 days.
See, I put all of this under company fit score, not engagement, because, I mean, what you're going to probably do here, like, let's say you have a company that has 50 contacts at it, and are you just going to apply 10 points to all 50 of those contacts because some anonymized person started researching consulting? So to me, I consider like intent signals a company fit criteria more so than a contact level anything, just because of what you're getting is anonymized company information, not any contact information.
I think that's fair. I don't think you can add it as a fit criteria, like in the like normal sense. It would have to be either a list or something, right? I think that's
where
fair.
like, I mean, so much of this is changing in real time because of these things appearing here or not appearing here, and this new functionality being added. Like, I'll be the first to say I'm not going to die on that hill, and I don't, precisely know. I haven't configured a score to the nth degree since a lot of this stuff has been, initially launched. For the most part, I'm kind of most jumping into portals and being like, "Oh, you don't have anything? Let's go turn something on."
You can do intent signals for the contacts, but those are just job started, email bounced, or job ended. I think there's probably a use case for scoring based on job started, but again, I would almost put this in fit more than like engagement because they're not doing anything with your brand.
Yeah. That's what I consider engagement, like a thing that they did that's like a trackable activity for us. Or if it's a thing about them, then that's a fit.
Yeah. All right. So then we have the researcher. This one, I do a score limit of, she knows what she's doing, 30. The reason I'm going to do that is the high intent or hand raiser is going to be a score of 60. 30 plus 10 plus 60 is 100, which is my like top score here. That's it. I don't really have anything more to say about it. You can now add scores up to 10,000. Personally, I don't feel like we need scores of 10,000. This is a philosophy. I think you just scale things to what you need them to be.
Yeah. I typically, for engagement score, fit scores, I do 100. An engagement score, I'll do 200, just to give me a little bit more granularity. But like needing more than that, I mean, the larger your score, the more things you have to configure, because otherwise you're just multiplying things by 10 instead of putting a 1 down. You're giving them a 10.
That's generally how I feel about it. Yeah. Is like, okay, I'm just if I'm doing 10,000, then I'm just multiplying everything. Well. When we talk about researchers, we're talking about people who are potentially in market. And this is where things get a little bit hairier because it can be hard to tell. But I generally start looking at things like, did they visit? URL is what I meant to do, not base URL. Path contains pricing, demo, even case study. These URLs are going to be specific based on your website, but these are the types of pages I'm going to start looking at here.
Yeah, and then I really start introducing frequency a lot in the researcher and hand raiser stage.
So you want to see how many times that they're visiting these pages, right? So if they visited 1 time, if they visited at least 3.
You got to give it a score.
Wow, what's happening? My God.
I know, this is where like I've had so many issues with this before.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine. 4 and 6. So you might add 1 score, let's say 5.
I'd give like a 10 there and then a 15 there.
15, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you add time frame on top of this?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And then our hand raisers are going to be demo form submissions. Anything that says, I want to talk to sales.
Yeah. These are your high friction things that someone has done. Like it's not just clicks. It's like they've provided you information or enacted in a meaningful way with some of your assets.
Yeah. And that's
the bones.
That's the bones. All right. Well, thanks, Rylee. Thanks, Chris, for trying. Thank you all for joining us this year as we built out value first scoring. We're going to keep going probably next year.
Sure.
I didn't actually ask you this, Rylee, before now. But yeah, I hope that you join us next year and keep learning with all of us.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Have a good one.